And we're live.
Hello, we are live after a few technical difficulties. Welcome to our HR Huddle. I think this is our first one in February of 2022. So happy February, everybody, and happy Monday. Jen and I just got back from a week in Florida, in the Florida Keys, which was lovely. And I was very happy after starting the weekend in Clearwater, Florida, which was very cold for a run that we did in Clearwater, that it warmed up and it was beautiful. And we just thought we have an upcoming mental health webinar next Wednesday or Tuesday, next week sometime, the 15th. I guess that's Tuesday. And we felt like we kind of got a mental health break working from somewhere else and thought we should talk about, gosh, what should we be doing for, the HR professionals and leaders that are listening to this, to make sure you're getting a mental health break and paying attention to what you can do to support your mental health, but then also your team and your people's. And one of them was working from someplace else. And for us in the Midwest, when I left, it was 19 below zero actual temperature. So even the 38 degrees in Clearwater was like a 50-degree swing, but 76 degrees and sunny, and the vitamin D that we received. And we did some strategic planning outside. We met with 12 other consultants to the profession and tried to be outside as much as possible for our meeting. I have to say was re-energizing. We got some clarity and, maybe a little bit of, soul feeding and some proactive time, which both Jen and I needed desperately with each other to kind of get centered about 2022 and what we're focusing on. And we're expanding our team like many of you are, and, adding new team members, new headcount, and doing some onboarding and orientation and all of those things. And we just needed to really get centered. We have some leaves happening also. So just planning for all of that was huge. And, I think both, number one, carving out time to do that is important. Number two, a different location does make a difference, to get out of either our office, whether it's an in-home office like this or your offices that you're working with at and coming to every single day. And then just having kind of the variety that we had, I think made a difference. So we just wanted to, encourage you all to look and see what you could do for yourself and for your team if you're doing any kinds of team meetings, to think about that. And, like I said, make sure you're carving the time, and then also thinking about location. I think that's important.
Yes, and Tamera, there are people listening to this probably that are thinking, well, that was pretty risky, ladies. You got on an airplane, you went to an airport, you hung out at a resort, and yes, there is a calculated risk, I guess, to that. We followed all the CDC guidelines for travel and, hand sanitized and wiped down seats. And like Tamera said, met outside. And, I tested before I went. I tested this morning when I got back last night. In my public areas of my home, I'll be wearing a mask, and so I don't give it to my children if I brought it home. And I'll get a PCR done in a few days, and then I'll take another at-home test toward the end of the week. And so like you have to do whatever makes you feel safe. And for some people, travel's not it. Maybe we have a group meeting in order to change our perspective, and we all do it from a different room in our house than our normal room. Instead of being in my office or standing here, maybe I would do it from a rocking chair in my living room or something. Now, some of you may have small children and that's not possible, but just trying to think, what could we do that would change it up, cause change? Because we are getting, a lot of us, this feeling of sameness and a rut, and video all the time and the same physical location, and just not getting out like we used to. And so anyway, it is causing a little bit of stir craziness, and mental health issues continue to be significant, and we have to pay attention to that. And you can be a perfectly healthy person and be struggling in this pandemic. If you haven't had moments of struggle, then maybe you're not normal, because I think it's been normal to have moments of anxiousness and lacking motivation and kind of even hopelessness a little bit, like, will it ever end? So there's all kinds of feelings, and those feelings are all likely valid. Now, one thing that Caroline and Tamara and I were talking about before this started, and Caroline's in the background hanging out with us, we were discussing a Fast Company article on, mental health and how to spot it, how to spot mental health issues if they're happening with your colleagues or coworkers. And, I told them both that I don't know that I got anything like super riveting from it, but I was reminded that, first of all, somebody's changed behavior is something to watch. And, if they were always, talkative, extroverted, reaching out, visible, and they're suddenly quiet, not communicating, you have to hunt them down. They've kind of fallen off the radar. That's probably a warning signal that something's up, whether it's mental wellness or whether it's engagement motivation. If they were always, pretty positive and upbeat, but they seem to be more like Eeyore in meetings and more negative, or if they always followed up and were countable, and suddenly a lot of balls are dropping and they seem to be not really getting their normal workload managed. Those are all possible signs to stop and say, hey, how are you really, and how can I help you? And what do you need over there? But I hate for us to wait till we see warning signs to have those conversations.
Right. I think we need to be more proactive and checking in. We've talked about the 4 questions to ask people to check in, and one of them is, how are you really? What are you working on that you like? What are you working on that you don't like? How can I help? What kind of support do you need? And this article talked about being more intentional about it in a virtual setting. Easier to spot or notice in person, but that doesn't mean we can't see patterns or can't see trends or can't check in when we're virtual, or if I'm virtual and Jen's in the office, in the physical office, and paying attention to that. So I think that's really important, because we're not all going to be in the office. And I think that's one thing to watch that we're hearing a little bit of right now is it's busy season. Everybody better get back to the office. And we would caution people to not have any kind of mandates right now, because, as Jen said, some people are still not comfortable with it. They have different circumstances going on, either personally for themselves, or with their family members or those that are close to them. So we have to pay attention to that. But also, we're watching people find opportunities where they can be supported in a hybrid model, or a full remote model, if that's what they're looking for. We think most people are looking for some kind of hybrid. They just want more control and say of when and where they work. And so it's not even full time I'm working from home. It could be part time, but that I can say when, or even mandating everyone's in the office on Wednesdays, because we have to all be in on Wednesdays. And instead saying, how as a team can we best work, and what works for you? And if we need to look at meetings, or, we're doing, some client work, and we have to be sensitive to the clients too. Where are they each at? So we would just, caution that, because that puts a lot of pressure and expectation and stress and anxiety on people, which we're trying to really pay attention to, and not be another source for it where we don't have to be.
Right. And, it's sad, but in truth, in many geographies, COVID is still, or has begun again
Peaked.
to rise and peak.
Yes.
And
Yes.
And we don't know if I know in some of the coastal cities, it's already reached its peak and it started its decline. This resurgence of the Omicron has brought, but in other locations, like the one I live in, it's been rising without the peak yet, and that just creates this whole nother round of anxiousness for people. And we have to recognize, in an anytime, anywhere work environment, in a hybrid, remote, blended work environment, people are hearing different messages in their counties and in their from their school districts and things. They're getting different sorts of feelings about what they should be doing. And we can't, we can try to encourage them and tell them the steps we're taking to ensure their safety, but we can't make them wrong if they're not comfortable or don't feel like coming. The other piece of it, though, is, in truth, some people, Tamara and I have said this a lot, in our Anytime, Anywhere work survey we've been doing for, a decade probably, people told us they wanted to work remotely and blended forever. And they wish their leaders would get on board. And so the fact that we've made this leap because of the pandemic, those people, they're not going back. They don't have to. And as Tamara said, they can find someplace else to go. So mandating is a bad idea. It's bad for business, and we got to figure it out. The other thing about mental health is, just it's so one size fits one. You want to make sure you're staying in front of and reminding people about your employee assistance program if you have it, or if your PEO has some sort of support resources available if they need to talk to somebody. You want to make sure that that's a part of your regular communications broadcasting inside the firm, that we don't just let that go because we're all kind of burning out or getting sick and tired of this long run we've had on the pandemic. Those mental health messages have to survive the pandemic because we had mental health issues before that, and we will continue to have them afterward. But there are some other things, like we were with those consultants Tamara mentioned, and I loved listening to some of the shifts that they had made to cope. Some really emphasized and focused on getting enough sleep. And there were books that they'd read and, different things that they'd read that how they could help their whole mental outlook and physical feelings of well-being by just getting enough sleep, and how they had like almost retrained themselves like you train a baby to sleep the right number of hours and to get to sleep, not to do your blue screen ahead of time. And, that works for some, exercise and the importance of exercise. Tamara and I practiced yoga a couple of times when we were down there. We're both longtime yogis, in the practice and learning of yoga. And it was so great to practice with someone else, with other people. It was so wonderful after all this time of remote practice or alone practice. And it wasn't just the physical, release and well-being, but being part of something and
with connection.
Yeah, it was really incredible. So, what are the things that would help feed you?
Yep.
Because if your mental health isn't mental, physical, spiritual well-being isn't there, your bucket's empty and you can't help refill anybody else or even spot it maybe in anyone else. So what are you doing as a listener here today and a leader? And then what could we do to sort of, re-energize our messaging around this to get other people to be looking at things they could do that could make them feel good?
Yeah. And another one we talked about was putting some parameters around when we work. And that can look like our start and stop times. And this has been more difficult, I think, in the remote. We've been reading about it and hearing about it, that I'm here 24/7 now. We always have been. So we've always had to try to manage this, but I don't turn it off, or I don't physically, if I don't have an office, I don't physically leave the office, or I don't shut my computer down, which the security guy, by the way, said we needed to shut our computers down every single night anyway. So that's a good practice to get into. But, having start and end times. And, one of the things, Jen and I were looking at is putting some focus time, more focus time, or some focus time, as some weeks might be, on our calendars, so that we have work time, because we make commitments with clients, or we have projects that we're kicking off, but then we fill it with a bunch of meetings, both external and internal. And having some time to actually work on projects. So that focus time, I think, is important. And then also looking at our meeting times, and can we do more 30-minute meetings? Could we adjust our time to be 50 or 55 minutes instead of 60-minute hours, kind of like a doctor or a psychiatrist might do? And are there other adjustments that we can make, to how we're calendaring and to how we're scheduling? One of the things we were looking at is, having 2 nights off. We're not turning our computers on 2 evenings a week, and not on Saturdays at all. By the way, telling your family you're going to do that, because they will help hold you accountable to that. I know. So when we're ready to make that commitment, make those commitments and tell people about it. Don't just make them secretly. That is why one of the things about goal setting is you are supposed to share them. So you set SMART goals and then you share them. But making these kind of commitments, is important, again, for our own mental health, but also for setting the tone and the pace for our team. And telling our team, we were together this weekend. So we were in the back seat of the car, working, and it was good to have some collaboration time. And we were sending our team some stuff and saying, we do not want you to look at this till Monday. We happen to be together working. And so we're going to get some of this stuff out that, you're looking for, but please do not reply to this right now. We are not looking for you to be on your phone replying to our emails or, looking at anything. And so being super intentional about that and really setting the tone, trying to model those behaviors that, we're looking for and that mental wellness, that we're striving for.
Yeah, Tamara, you're talking about boundary setting.
Mm-hmm.
And, part of mental well-being is the feeling that I am powerful as it relates to how I spend my time, not powerless, right? So that 55-minute meeting can make you feel more powerful during the day if you felt like you had time to get a drink and go to the restroom, and not sort of as chained to your video and your meetings as many of us might feel. And so, what are those shifts that I could make where I am establishing some boundaries and asking others to accept them and support them, getting my family involved, my team involved first, and then clients have to follow. And you just start saying, this is how I work. In my case, I'm making some shifts to some of my meeting times and lengths. And I'm just telling everybody, we're going to try this. I don't even know if it'll work. It might not make any sense, but I want to give it a try. So I have the tiniest bit more breathing room, and can feel more sort of in control of how I'm spending my time, and less like, geez, I haven't eaten all day, and gosh, I barely drank anything, but that's good because I wouldn't have had time to use the restroom. That works okay for a day here and a day there, but not every day, day in, day out. And so some of you I know feel that way. You're doing a ton of meetings, whether they're in person or remote, without those boundaries. And then you have that 24/7 that Tamara talked about. And, we've always said we are big proponents of anytime, anywhere work, but that's not all the time, everywhere work. And so just recognizing that cannot be like that. That's not healthy. And it's unsustainable for the organization. You're not doing anyone any favors if you work like that, because they can't back you up, backfill that later. It's impossible. So anyway, it's all stuff to look at related to mental well-being. The other thing I wanted to touch base with, Tamara, is there's a ton of mental health conversation in my running groups. I run a running group on Facebook, a local running group of, I guess, about 600 or 700 members now. And then there are a number of other ones, trail running groups and national and international running groups that I belong to, that we post questions and ideas and race information and all kinds of stuff out there. But there's always, almost every single day, there's a post or two from somebody who is just really struggling. And it's mostly struggling with either anxiety or depression. Super common. Mm-hmm. And it's, I admire them because they'll post and say, well, I really didn't want to get out of bed today. One woman posted yesterday and she said, so I texted my husband who was in our kitchen. And I said, I need you to come in here and make me tie on my tennis shoes. Like encourage me, stand here with me while I do it, to get me out to run. It was cold. This is a perfect time of year to feel like hibernating for some of us. Yes. I just admire people who are willing to acknowledge that they're feeling that way, and B, ask for help. So if you are feeling that way, it's okay to ask for help or ask for encouragement from others. Exercise, there's a common theme in these groups that I feel better after I've exercised. Not well, not over it completely. Not I don't experience it again. Just I felt better then. And then, if we feel like there are people in our lives who are struggling, could we be the person that, walks beside them and says, what would make you feel better? And how about I, kind of stand here while you get ready to go do that, whatever that is. And maybe it's go back to sleep for 2 hours or something. I don't know what it would be, but just really looking at the people in our lives and trying to see where we could be an encourager and a stand for them to be well.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just a matter of being with them, like you were saying, stand with them. But sometimes it's just being with them. Just, I'm here. There's nothing necessarily to say or do, but it's the presence that they need. And sometimes that's what we need. I just need your presence. I don't need you to fix anything. I don't need you to solve anything. And I know a lot of times that's what we feel like we have to do is solve it or fix it. And often we can't, but we can be there. And that alone does make a difference. Now, sometimes there are, times to offer resources, or make connections. And I know we've both done that, Jen, at different times, for people. And if that's the case, then, provide resources or make connections that are appropriate. I think that's important too.
Yes.
We are doing a webinar on this topic next week, like I said, on February 15th. So if you're interested, check it out. I can put the link in here and invite anybody, from your firm that could benefit or come and attend and get the recording. And there'll be resources in there as well. We know a lot of firms in HR, leaders have been doing providing other resources and also, offering, discussion topics and making it okay, taking away the stigma about talking about mental health and where does that fit in work. And if we're not well, we're not going to be well at work. So I think that's important for us to pay attention to and just make it common for us to be talking about how important this is. And then it does make it easier when we do need help, and we probably all need help at some point in our lives, that it makes it easier to do that. So we welcome your thoughts. If you have resources or other things that you've been doing, gosh, we're interested in learning about them. So let us know. We would love to hear from you about that. And otherwise, we will plan on seeing you next week and look forward to connecting with you then. So thank you very much.
Bye, all.
Awesome.